Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for this opportunity. I also want to support the amendment that has actually been brought forward by Senator for Vihiga, Senator Ososi, who is also the chair for the County Public Investment and Special Funds Committee. This is a very good proposal, Senator Ososi, and I think, you see, regardless of the political affiliations we are in, I subscribe to the proposal you're bringing forth to this House. Mr. Speaker, Parliament needs to stop now being perceived as a toothless bulldog. Mr. Speaker, Parliament actually approves the appointment of several state officials, and Parliament equally has the mandate to strip them off some of those positions they hold. So, Mr. Speaker, I do not understand where people get the courage and the guts not to honor parliamentary summons, Mr. Speaker. Parliamentary summons need to be honored for the Senate to gain its rightful place in society. Senate needs to bite. And in fact, Senator Ososi, the proposal of raising it to 2 million needs to rise higher, Mr. Speaker, and introduce a situation where some of these officials are not going to have anticipatory bail. I know there are people who are going to argue that it would actually even interfere with their rights and privileges. But equally, as representatives of the people who spare time to sit in those committees are actually being disserviced by having to wait for people who don't show up, Mr. Speaker. So the situation of anticipatory bail in this case should not appear. Mr. Speaker, we very well know the issue of accountability is very central and key to this administration, led by our own President, Dr. William Ruto, and we should be leading from the front. We can't have members being summoned to committees and all they do is issue apologies and rescheduling of meetings. I agree with my chair, Senator Mandago, who's just stepped out, that it takes us so many meetings to have a appear in front of a committee, and some of the issues are so dire. Look at such a scenario, Mr. Speaker and members. A member who has actually looted public resources and is being expected to appear in a committee and doesn't show up. By the time Parliament expires, these guys will have already gotten away with the crimes they have committed. And maybe the next time they make a comeback to Parliament, there will be paupers, no money to recover from such kind of individuals. So, Senator Ososi, the sanctions must be severe and enforceable for this House to regain their rightful place as the upper house. And it's not going to be business as usual, Mr. Speaker, because it's not just for the county chiefs. I think for the county chiefs looks worse because they have an opportunity, they have money that has been allocated to them, and they are taking advantage of that fact to easily give the 500,000, which an ordinary mwananchi from Nyamakima or Kenyanya is not able to raise. It shouldn't be very easy for someone to give 500,000 money which any ordinary man has actually not even heard of, Mr. Speaker. So people who really understand how critical accountability is should appear and honor parliamentary summons, because, Mr. Speaker, as as legislators and representatives of the people, we spend most of our time to actually keep time and attend these committees, and members of the public are actually waiting for some of their issues to be heard. then the next thing you get is, please reschedule. I don't think we want to deal with such business. So Senator Ososi, I think you've heard the issue of anticipatory bail should not arise in this case. The 2 million is a bit on the lower side, especially when you look at the case of county chiefs, because that's money they can sign off very quickly, because they have huge resources that are sent down to counties for use in assisting people. I see there are countries which have taken very radical measures when members or people who are expected to appear in the committees fail to appear. Countries like Swaziland, South Africa, we need to borrow a few cases from those countries so that we actually change how we generally carry ourselves as leaders and as members of the public. Because in as much as we want to talk about this from this angle, it's generally a culture, a Kenyan culture, whereby people think they can easily get away with whatever ills they commit and nothing will actually happen to them. Someone kills an individual and are still walking large in society. No action has been taken. Mr. Speaker, it shouldn't be that it's, we are now talking, we are actually supporting this amendment to curb some of the big, the perceived big fish. But surely, it shouldn't be easy for the big fish to get away with some of the ills they commit. What will we be showing the ordinary people who do not have some of the privileges these officials have, Mr. Speaker? So this amendment is timely and needs to be more tougher than actually proposed here, Mr. Speaker. So I want to support and say that it's time for Parliament to stop being perceived as a toothless bulldog, and the Senate needs to bite more than it's biting now. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Mundigi.
Asante Bwana Spika kwa kunipa ruhusa nichangie mjadala wa mambo ya gavana, vile hatua itakuwa inasukuliwa wakiwa wamealikwa wakuja wajibu maswali. Kitu ya kwanza nataka niseme, miaka iliyopita ya ukatusi miaka 10, pesa nyingi kaunti nyingi zimepatiwa pesa, na kaunti nyingi pesa zimepotea na magavana na wafanyikazi. Na pia ukikuta tukisema wakati wapatia pesa kidogo, huwa saa hiyo tunakuanga senator na magavana, Bwana Spika, huwa analamika tunakuwa ni maadui. Lakini tukiwaongezea pesa inakuwa pia ni maadui, kwa sababu wakati tunaenda masinani tukitaka kuangalia ile kazi wamefanya, Bwana Spika, huwa wanakuwa uso yao wanakuwa watakuona sisi, sio kwa mikutano, sio wapi, inakuwa ni shinda. Na wakati tunawahitaji wakuje wajibu maswali katie vile pesa wametumia, inakuwa ni shinda. Wanajipa ruhusa ya kusema wako na kazi nyingi, wako mambo mingi. Naomba Bwana Spika, tuchukue hatua tuone ni nini inaweza kuangaliwa na ni pesa ngapi, kama watakuwa wanahudhuria kikao tuone pesa ngapi, kama hiyo inasemekana ni milioni 2 ambayo wanaweza kupigwa faini ndio waweze kusema kuwa watakuwa wakihudhuria. Nataka kusema for example kama Embu, kama wakati huu gavana aliyeko anajaribu kufanya kazi, lakini miaka 10 ya ukatusi pesa ilitumika na njia ile haifai. Kulikuwa ni mambo ya kupigana, kusoseana na mambo mingi. Sasa unakuta wakati gavana ameingia, amekuta kuna pesa nyingi imetumika na njia haifai. Unakuta mabenki haikuwa inalipwa, unakuta hospitali ilikuwa imesoroteka, kwa unakuta kulikuwa na shinda. Kwa hiyo naunga mkono vitu kama hiyo isukuliwe. Na pia kuna kitu tunafaa tuangalie, kama gavana amesimama na ameshindwa, itakuwa inasukuliwa hatua gani? Kwa hiyo kama sasa kaunti nyingi pesa ilitumika na ile magavana, lakini hakuna hatua imechukuliwa. Kwa hivyo nataka kuomba pia hapo iangaliwe, tuone itakuwa namna gani. After ameshindwa, tuone itakuwa inachukuliwa hatua namna gani. Kwa hivyo naunga mkono, tuone vile itaendelea, ndio tuone vile watapelekwa kotini, ama tukiwahitaji kuwe na askari. Tukisema ni askari ambaye ni wa serikali, itakuwa na shinda. Tulikwishaona kama wale tunafanya kazi nao hapa wanafanya kazi nzuri, na tumeona pia mtu akileta shinda hapa, kama siku nyingine najua ni rafiki yangu Senator Sirigei alishukua hapa njuu. Kwa hiyo ningeomba hao askari ndio tutakuwa tunatumia waweze kuendelea kulete magavana katika Senate. Asante na naunga mkono para speaker.
There being no other senator interested in contributing, I'll call upon the mover, Senator Osotsi, to reply.
Mr. Speaker, let me start by thanking all the members who have contributed to this debate, particularly the leadership of this House, the Senate Majority Leader, Minority Leader, Minority Whip, Majority Whip, and the others. Mr. Speaker, listening to the contribution by the members in this House, I have come to notice that probably this House needs to have a total review of the Powers and Privileges Act, because members have raised a number of issues. But Mr. Speaker, you know my bill was only dealing with the two issues. One is the issue of enhancement of fines upon someone, and number two, the issue of the power of arrest. But members have raised a number of issues which maybe we need to consider in a proper bill that will look at those issues. I have heard members talk about contempt of parliament, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I think this House needs to have a look at this matter. If you go to other jurisdiction, for example, Zambia, which is an African country like us, they have, in their Powers and Privilege Act, they have defined the process of handling contempt of parliament. And Mr. Speaker, there are issues to do with list of shame. This can also come there. Issues to do with the clearance for elections. I think, Mr. Speaker, this is an important issue because this House has adopted reports. Some of these reports have even recommended that some individuals are unfit to lead. But what has been done about that, Mr. Speaker? These people continue to contest elections and still come back to the same House that resolved that they are unfit to lead. Mr. Speaker, the other issue which we must be alive to when we talk about our powers and privilege is how we can protect our oversight role. Mr. Speaker, I have seen in some counties where whenever senators want to do their oversight role, and they are doing it, governors even send people to demonstrate against the senators. Some even send MCS to go and do press conferences condemning senators. Mr. Speaker, we must find a way of protecting our oversight role, especially in the counties. Mr. Speaker, you know very well that this bill is not just dealing with the issues of governance, but we are dealing with all witnesses that appear in the House, be it witnesses from the national government, from county government, even personal individuals who appear before Parliament. They will be expected to adhere to the provisions of this bill. Mr. Speaker, if you allow me to quickly go through some of the comments members have talked about. there was the issue of increasing the fines. Honorable members will be consulting with the relevant committee, in this case the JLAC, on the proposals that you have given, so that we can consider amending the bill to reflect the positions that you have given. Mr. Speaker, there is also the issue of urgency, appearance on urgency. That has been covered in this bill, so that you don't have to wait for 7 days, as we have always been doing. You can be asked to appear before the committee within a shorter period of time, and this will enhance the operations of our committee. Mr. Speaker, there was also the issue of who bears the burden of the fine. I think this is a very important point, because we should not fine these people and they end up drawing money from public coffers. So this is one area that, again, I'll be consulting with the committee to amend it, so that it's very clear that these funds will be from personal sources. There was also the issue of how do you recover the fines. Mr. Speaker, this bill makes reference to Debt Summary Recovery Act, which has specific guidelines on how that recovery is done and how complaints are filed. So the clerk of the two houses will be able to file complaints to trigger this process. Mr. Speaker, there was also the issue of the powers to arrest. Mr. Speaker, if you look at the amendments that are proposed under clause 4(6), that says where an order of arrest is to be effected by the officer of a House of Parliament, the Inspector General shall facilitate the arrest as may be requested by the clerk. So we are not taking away the powers of the police, but we are bringing in a provision that the Inspector General shall facilitate that officer of Parliament to ensure that the arrest is done. So this particular clause ensures that this bill or this particular amendment is in line with the Article 245 of the Constitution that gives independence to the office of the Inspector General of the Police. But at the same time, Mr. Speaker, if you go to Article 245 2B, it talks about independence of the IG, but then it also says the IG will perform any other functions prescribed by the national legislation. So by us saying that the Inspector General of Police shall facilitate, that is in line with Article 245, and there is nothing unconstitutional about that. Mr. Speaker, there was also the issue of where to hold the witnesses. If you look at the amendments, Mr. Speaker, under clause 4(7), says a person arrested under subsection 3 shall A, be held at such a place as specified in the National Police Service Act, or as shall be designated by the clerk for the purposes of holding such persons. B, be produced before court or house or committee that summoned that person on the next day. This covers that, and that deals with the issue of constitutionality, that this individual will be held at a gazetted place where such witnesses are held, or a place designated by the clerk. For the purpose of this house, we have a police station in the presence of Parliament, and that's where such a person can be held. Mr. Speaker, I don't want to belabor the points because members have exhaustively discussed this bill, and I want to encourage members who have amendments to approach the clerk and make the amendments, and I will also be making amendments to reflect the views expressed by members. Mr. Speaker, I want to thank the members, and I know this bill is going to be passed by this House. I want to ask the members of the National Assembly to also do the same, because they go through the same challenges we are going through. Just this week, Mr. Speaker, it was reported that a top officer of a revenue collection agency in this country was summoned by the National Assembly for failing to appear before National Assembly for a record 14 times. And there are many other cases like that. So I think this is the time that Parliament need to exercise their powers, and I want to encourage that we have an overhaul of the Powers and Privilege Act, the Parent Act, so that we can deal with the issue of contempt of Parliament. Mr. Speaker, I also want to request that, pursuant to Standing Order number 66-3, that the question, the putting the question be deferred to a later date because of the numbers here. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Osotsi, this bill is deferred to